shown soon. And the next presentation is very important. It will be of interest to Moscow city dwellers. Is Nadezhda Kirillina, head of ecology and security team within the Safe Transportation Center for Organization of Traffic under the government of Moscow, will talk about the Eco Map service. By the way, I used that one because picking a flat for myself, I was looking at that map. It shows the concentration of exhaust gases around Moscow, so it's very useful. It's over to you. Hi everyone, my name is Nadezhda Kirillina, and today I will tell you about how we can use big data in order to assess the emissions, car emissions concentration in Moscow. I've been analyzing the data from transportation for quite a while, and my team is now tasked with managing two services, the EcoMap and ProMobility. Within ProMobility, we analyze all the anonymous data we collect from couriers, from taxis, car sharing, from scooters, and we use that analysis to prepare dashboards and maps. We assess the amount of emissions produced by cars in Moscow. I will talk about EcoMap more in details. The main tools that my team uses is SQL, QGIS, and PowerPoint. SQL helps us to treat large amounts of raw data to get very specific and useful parameters at the output. QGIS is a very convenient service that helps us to test out our theories. And PowerPoint helps us to present the results of our research in a very accessible way and in simple words. I will show you how we work with these services within our innovation center. First, we collect the functional requests from our users, the future users of our service, and very often these are our colleagues from the Department of Transportation or from other departments or other agencies. Then we pass all these results to the data storage team for them to aggregate that data into understandable parameters. For instance, we get all the data about scooters to telematics, and we want to get the number of trips performed by users. So to get from raw data to specific indicators, big data processes helps us a lot. And then the Directorate of Design helps us to consider different design options to come up with a dashboard that responds to needs of our users. And then it depends on what we want to get at the output. If it's a digital product or a map, then we give all that information to designers, and if it's a dashboard, we send the data to data analysts, and they prepare dashboards that help people to take managerial solutions based on big data. I'd like to talk about the innovative service about transportation. It stores information about the transportation of Moscow, and it helps people to use transportation of Moscow in a safe way. And also we help managers to take, and city administration to take managerial decisions. The Innovation City project helps to create a system where a city is managed by data, and it helps us to create a very comprehensive structure. We've built an ecosystem thanks to all of our team that work within design, data storage, and development. They tackle very complex tasks to come up with the full cycle services. The uniqueness of our ecosystem is that teams can operate as one large team, putting their forces together or act separately. For instance, my team of ecology and safety, it works within the Directorate of Analysis. Also, we work with big data. There is a storage of the data we get from transportation, and we get data from the Department of Transportation, and then this information gets treated, checked, and if everything is correct, this information goes to our data storage. And in future, we can use that data to build useful and convenient digital services. Right now, our storage is 0.5
тариф в мобильном интернете составляет 10 гигабайтов в месяц.
Petabytes of data.
Петабайта данных, это как если бы вы пользовались мобильным интернетом более 4000.
Comparing to the mobile data you use per month, if it's 10 GB, 0.5 petabytes corresponds to using mobile data for 4,000 years and a half.
Визуализацию и уже принимать.
Analyzing all that data, we can create analytical conclusions, visualization, and create a service that will provide you with support to move around the city in a safe and optimal way. The data storage is the core of our information center, and based on that core, we created over 110 digital products. And now I would like to talk about the unique service, the EcoMap, that assesses the amount of emissions from cars.
Экологическая карта — это интерактивная карта.
The EcoMap is an interactive map that shows the concentration of car emissions produced by cars in Moscow for every street and for every hour. So the analysis is quite precise. The EcoMap is a unique service, and this service gains more and more recognition from the professional community. We receive different kinds of awards, so I'd like to talk more about it. So, burning fuel, cars produce emissions, starting from fine particles up to greenhouse gases. In order to reduce emissions, we first need to assess the current amount of emissions. And in order to define effective measures, we need to detect the sources of these emissions, and that's why we need the EcoMap. The algorithm calculates emissions for every street, every hour, every type of transportation, every ecological class, and we use other parameters. The uniqueness of the service is that the calculations are based on the videos captured by cameras. Yes, the other calculations use the statistics of the vehicles that move, the number of vehicles that move around Moscow. But of course, that's not the Moscow area fleet. There are other vehicles that come into Moscow as well. So we can extract analytical data for any period starting from the 1st of January 2024.
По объему выбросов.
And here we can pick any street to compare these streets in terms of the intensity of emissions. So we can dig into that analytical data. Then there is a tab corresponding to concentration. Emissions do not equate to pollutants concentration. So we can assess the situation around every air station on the garden ring of Moscow. And then there is a tab
Можно выбрать любой период, сравнить
pollution of streets for every street, and you can compare different districts of Moscow to, for instance, define top 10 streets in terms of different kinds of pollutants, from emissions to greenhouse gases.
и окружающей среды. Центр
Natural Resources Use Department worked on that service. The Center for Organization of Moscow Traffic and Eco Monitoring worked together to create this service. So they brought their efforts together to come up with this digital product.
существующая инфраструктура камер
We use existing infrastructure and existing cameras
о том, как распределяется вся интенсивность
to capture raw data, and that information is enough to define
грузовой автобус, экологический
emissions intensity in terms of different transportation types.
для
We
грузовиков
take into consideration the vehicle type, the engine type. For trucks, we take into consideration the
от разных
weight
этих корзин,
of these trucks, and for buses, the number of passengers.
проезжает по улице.
So these are the different categories, and all these categories produce different amounts of emissions.
Ключевая методика, которая лежит
The
в основе нашего
key methodology that lies
исследовательского института
as a basis of
НИАТ,
this service is the methodology of NIAT,
чтобы оценить
the
интенсивность. И эту
Research Institute of Automobile Transportation. So we use our methodology and combine it with NIAT's methodology. We take into consideration the speed of vehicles, the type of vehicle, the ecological class, the type of engine, the amount of the number of passengers, and the weight
нашу методику
for buses, and the weight of trucks.
более подробно, чтобы понимать,
I'll talk about our methodology, and then I will explain how we calculate the amount of emissions. So first, we register the traffic intensity using cameras. Then we split that data into categories by ecological class, type of vehicle, and other criteria that I mentioned. Then for the streets that don't have cameras, we apply there the average
методику НИАТ,
value taken from the streets that have
и каждого
cameras, and then we use NIAT's methodology to calculate the emissions by street and by hour. The unique feature of our service is that we get very precise data in terms of intensity. That is possible thanks to the cameras that capture videos and pictures, and we indeed can calculate the amount of emissions produced by cars traveling through these streets, and that's a great basis for
новую
analysis to analyze the changes in infrastructure. For instance, if a new metro station was open, we can assess how that affected the emissions.
более подробной методики расчета.
Now, if we look closer at the calculation methodology, when we get the data about the traffic intensity and when we split and distribute that data by category, we can calculate the intensity of emissions by street.
Различных категорий
For the streets where the cameras are not present, we use the average value
закреплена своя категория, и мы это учитываем при
by street category. Every street is
когда камеры отсутствуют. И также мы
assigned to a certain category according to building codes and rules. And then we take into consideration the area of Moscow to make our
камеры
calculations even more precise, to understand how many cars travel through streets where there are no cameras.
последний шаг,
So we've covered all the streets of Moscow, and after that,
километр
we use NIAT's methodology. We take the coefficient of emissions per kilometer of road, we multiply that by the length of
для каждой
streets,
и каждого часа.
and thus we can get the level of pollution for every street per hour.
Познакомиться подробней.
I already mentioned the different tabs that we have. Let's look at them.
То у вас
As this service is used in the internal
поближе посмотреть, что за ним стоит.
perimeter, you can look
На экране
at it closer.
вкладка, собственно, карта. И здесь мы
Here you see the tab
где
with the map. This is the interactive map where all the streets of Moscow are highlighted in different colors based on the level of emissions. So you can see which streets have
ее как выбросы
get
менялись за последние
more
7 дней.
intense or less intense emissions. And you can see how the situation evolved over the last 7 days. What is the distribution
Произвел
by types of vehicles and what amount of emissions was produced by one type of vehicles or the other. The next tab is concentration.
оценить качество воздуха, нам
In order to assess
станции воздуха.
air quality, we need to get data from air quality stations.
Для каждой станции воздуха показывают.
Here you also have an interactive map, and
Также можно на этой вкладке увидеть
every air station shows the
определяющих
air quality parameters.
и удобно иметь
You can see different parameters here because air quality is defined by various parameters, and you can look at one parameter that tells you how polluted the air is around one station or the other.
эта вкладка дашборд.
And the most important tab for analysis is
Период.
the dashboard. Here you can analyze data
Можно сравнить
during the selected
транспорта с количеством выбросов
time frame,
типа транспорта.
and you can, for instance, compare the number of trips
Общий вклад
with
выбросы может быть очень
and by types of transportation, because types of transportation, types of vehicles differ in terms of the amount of emissions they produce.
загрязнений.
You can look at the top 10 streets in terms of pollution
Округа
or other emissions that you pick, and you can compare districts between themselves.
я продемонстрирую вам работу сервиса.
And now I'd like to show you how this service operates.
Сейчас на экране представлена вкладка «Карта».
So right now you can see the map tab,
Видим интерактивную карту, которая показывает объем
and here you can see the interactive map that shows you the amount of emissions for a certain day. We can structure the data and we can select the data we're interested in for the time of the day for the certain area, and we can see how the amount of emissions changed over the last 7 days. For instance, let's pick Krasnopresnenskaya embankment.
по выбросам на
Here
выбранной.
you can see
Доступна аналитика
the data about the emissions for that street. We have analytical data for the 5 pollutants and for greenhouse gases.
и оценить
We can see
от
how the
типа транспорта.
amount of emissions or how the concentration of certain pollutants evolved. And then we can see analytical data for types of vehicles that traveled there. So you have analysis for the last 7 days, and you compare the data year on year
В краткосрочном периоде,
to see
долгосрочном. Можно выбирать
how the situation evolved short term and long term. So you can pick the type of vehicle and see
отдельно
the contribution of that type of vehicle into the overall situation, and look
любой выбранный
at
в Москве.
the analytics by type
Во вкладке
of pollutants and emissions. Then we go to dashboard, and here you have more detailed analytics for the whole city.
нас интересуют
There you can select
округа,
the pollutant,
зоны, типы.
the time frame,
Мы получаем всю аналитику, которая
districts,
по
types of vehicle, and
выбранных фильтров.
you'll have all that analytical data based on
Динамику
your
парниковых
input,
сравнить с аналогичным
the
периодом
information you put into the filters.
и объемы выбросов,
Then we can compare
а также оценить
today's situation to
выбросы
1 year ago,
сравнить.
and you can see the distribution of emissions
Нашего дашборда представлен
across different districts and compare
выбранные
these emissions zone by zone, area by area.
улицы между собой, но проговорю, что
Then we can compare streets in terms of the same parameters, and I need to mention here that, of course,
чем длиннее дорога, это будет
the rating of the street is impacted by its length. The longer the street is, the more emissions
все.
it
Я
gets.
была очень
So that's it from me.
про наш
I was very happy and really glad to present this service to you. We try to make it as convenient as possible, to make your moving around the city as ecological as possible, and to prove it with data. Thank you, Nadezhda. And you are wearing a green jacket, so we are talking about cybersec here. Do you get calls from scams? Yes, I do. Probably they are men, but seriously, what are the scam schemes that you experienced? What do they want usually? Probably they try to access your money, of course, but what technique do they try? Well, I usually do not pick up the phone if the number is unknown to me. When I did, well, people usually started trying to sell me some medical or banking services. Okay, so they were not trying to frighten you, saying that they are from police or from the security service. They were trying to go to the next level. Yes. Right. You know, once I was changing the hospital I'm attached to. By the way, I'm really so happy with the Moscow services. It's like in Switzerland. But I saw several miracles in my life. The first miracle before my first child, that's a miracle on its own. But the first miracle is a miracle of Moscow. 20 years ago, I moved to Moscow, and I was moving from Berlin. And I was thinking, moving from Berlin, that, well, probably I'm saying goodbye to that life, to S-Bahns, to that green grass in parks, to have, probably I was thinking that I was saying goodbye to high-speed trains. But 3 years later, we got Sapsans, then we got trains and the circular railway, and here you're taking care of us from the point of view of ecology. Moscow is, yeah, I think Moscow was rated among top 5 cities across all the different parameters, including population satisfaction. And right now, do you think we are within top 3 cities? Well, we are doing our best to be there. We are trying to climb this rating. Well, I hope that we're in for the ecological miracle as well. Of course, back in the 90s, when all these factories and facilities got bankrupt, that was bad for the economy, but for the ecology, that was great, because in the center of Moscow, air is better compared to the air within the city centers of small cities. And we need to value that. We are living in wonderful times. Thank you so much, Nadezhda.